Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to our Better Riding series. So here we are working with Honda Motorcycles UK, which is why we've got this beautiful MSX125 Grom in the office. And we are making this video series to make us all better, safer, smoother riders. So this series contains plenty of tips and tricks and hints and advice, because there's always going to be something new to learn, isn't there? I mean, if we put the hours into actively learning and practicing the correct techniques, then we can all be better, which of course leads to more confident riders as well. So I'm not doing this alone, of course. So let's meet the man with the roadcraft, the machine control and the mindset. It's BikeSocial's motorbike coach. It's Mark McVeigh.
G'day, Michael. How are you going there?
Hello, matey. Yes, I'm all right. Thank you very much. How are you?
Yes, not too bad. Just a bit of jet lag after ECMA and MC Live, and then back on the 24-hour plane ride back down under. Lots of fun.
I'm sure the weather will cheer you up. It's December here, so it's
Yes.
not particularly pretty. But anyway, any wildlife to keep us on our toes in this episode?
Any wildlife? No, just a bunch of mowers flying around. So hopefully we'll have some peace and quiet this time.
Go on then, Mark. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, so today, basically overtaking is one of the topics, and also some machine control skills for filtering and, in tight traffic and tight spaces.
Good. I mean, there's so many different variations and methods and ways of overtaking, and from the angle at which you overtake to the speed to the planning. There's a lot that goes into it, and it can become what appears on paper or certainly visually as a fairly simple routine maneuver can be quite complex. Where do we start?
I kind of like the analogy, Mike Tyson. Everything's fine and dandy until you get punched on the nose. And that's kind of what it's like with overtaking, right? So we'll start off with just the simple, straightforward maneuver. We'll just let this video run through first, and then we'll go back and just break it down step by step. So pretty straightforward maneuver. So we're basically in that kind of lane position 3. The road seems pretty clear. We're checking our mirror. Very important to have good situational awareness, good 360 degree awareness of what's going on, behind you, in front of you, in front of the car, etc. So the rider's kind of just in the lane position 3, checked his mirror. Next thing is the lifesaver. Make sure you check there before you put the indicator on. Get out around the car and give yourself plenty of room to the car laterally, and then indicate and another lifesaver back into lane position 3. And that's as kind of as straightforward as it can be.
MSM, of course, is my mirror signal maneuvers, but also my initials, so I can never forget that bit.
Exactly.
So it looks like in our graphic here, in our animation, it looks like it's a powerful bike, which of course it makes overtaking easier, doesn't it? Because you've got the revs, you've got the momentum. Even if you haven't, you can, once you've done your checks and you've made sure that it's good to go and you're ready for action, a slight increase in throttle angle and you can zip by with relative ease. What if you're on a sort of a slower machine or a less powerful machine? What are the sort of tips there?
You need more skill, I guess. If you're on a lower powered machine, you just don't have that luxury of giving it a little bit of a squirt to get by. So you need to consider the gear that you're in, the positioning, building up a little bit of momentum. So everything needs to be more on point, compared to having a bike that has the power.
It makes it harder then, doesn't it?
I think so.
That example we just had there was a nice clear road. There was nothing coming the other way. You didn't have any, there was no hazards to worry about. What if perhaps the car was not paying much attention, or if there was something coming the other way? Is there a different process that you'd advise there?
I have this animation ready, actually, that we can look at. So we play this one, and you can see we'll just let it run through, and then we'll look at it step by step. So obviously the difference there was that we had the car coming the other way. So then our line position, for the safety bubble needed to change. So just to give us that extra space to that hazard. So he's in line position 2. And then once the car's kind of clear, the rider can move into lane position 3 and then continue on as before, with your mirror signal maneuver and the lifesaver. And that's all pretty straightforward, that one. So very similar. And then I guess if we introduce then, a bit of a curveball, some of the things that can happen, and I think these days with all the distracted driving going on, this is quite common. So let's just run this next reel through. Same deal, getting past as before, but whoops, the car's had a bit of a movement on it. So if we kind of play that back again, there's always kind of like a information. There's always kind of a clue. So here are we looking at maybe the gap between the tire and the white line, for example. That's something to look at. Is the car weaving around? And maybe if we look at the driver, can you see the head moving around at his phone? There's always a clue somewhere. And I think it's really important to, just look at that information and just consider all the information that's on offer.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's, as motorcycle riders, we've got the advantage because the majority of us are on bikes where we're slightly higher. Our head, our point of vision is slightly higher than all of the other vehicles. Sweeping generalization, of course, because we can't see through lorries or vans as easy as we can with cars. But if you can see through a car's rear window, or if you can see what's going on inside, you can often see, or sometimes use different senses. Sometimes you can smell even if there's something going on in the car that's distracting the driver, or if they're where they are at their position in the lane. So it's all of this information, all these clues, like you said, you're piecing together a puzzle that will allow you to then make that maneuver to get around the vehicle safely, securely, quickly, and make progress. But it's all about making sure that you've got all of that information before you're striking.
Exactly. It's just using that information, and it is such a busy environment, with these hazards all around, and especially these days. On this next clip, this kind of brings it to the next level. So let's just have another look in there and see what's going on this time. And the cars come, that's getting a bit more serious now. So if we just kind of play that through again and again, we're looking for that information. What's the car doing? Is there any kind of indication? Was the car weaving around? Was the speed going up and down? That's always a good warning. If the car's actually accelerating and slowing down, that's a sign of kind of distracted drivers. So yeah, all those little clues just to be aware, of what can happen.
Perfect example of making sure that you've got enough space in your lane. So make sure that you're as wide as you can, giving yourself as much space for those kind of issues. I was taught many years ago, and I still use this technique now. If it's in the right situation, if I'm coming up behind a vehicle, I try to demonstrate with my hands. But rather than getting up close and then making the overtake, because you're restricting your vision somewhat, is almost pull back, have a look out, because if there's I can't see on the screen. If you're in the other lane, you can move out into the other lane without committing to the overtake. Because if you've got a powerful enough bike, you can move out into that other lane, have a look. If there's something coming, obviously move back. You've got the space. But if you move out and you've got the power and nothing's coming, then that's your opportunity to just zip by. So sometimes it's about the angle of attack, isn't it? Attack. Again, we shouldn't make it as aggressive as that. But the angle of progress, how about we use that term?
Yeah, absolutely. And this next video, Michael, kind of really demonstrates that point. And so, we'll just run it through first and see what happens. Boom.
Oh.
So that's obviously not an ideal outcome, but this is the type of thing that's happening these days. So let's just run it back and have a bit of a think. And as you're saying, we're looking at it here and we're going, okay, well, can he see the road now, or he or she see the road now, that junction? So like you said before, you can pull back in. Okay, actually I didn't see the road until I came out that upcoming junction, so I can pull back in. Or I can just sit sit there, with at the same speed, that's an option as well. I can just hang back and just wait there until that red car goes past the junction. But we keep going, and that's kind of what can happen. So that you're spot on. We could have just hung back. We could have just pulled out. Oh, the extra vision that we get then maybe it allows us to see that hazard. And then yeah, we can bail. We can just go back into the line again and pick another safer moment to overtake.
Yeah, the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? You've got to make sure that whatever it is that you're going to be doing, any kind of maneuver on the road, you've got to be confident and you've got to be absolutely certain that it's going to be able to, you're going to pull it off without any kind of hazards.
I think these days there's just so many distracted drivers and so many more hazards. Yeah, it's just much trickier. I was actually when I was putting this together, I was thinking back about when I was 17, which is 40 years ago, and I was overtaking a lorry and it was the biggest lorry. So they've got 45. I think they're 45 feet long. And literally, that's what happened to me. I was alongside the lorry on my 250 LC, blast from the past. And before I could even blink, that lorry was in my line, and I was on the nature strip, motocrossing. Yeah, just what a young fella's reaction. Just luckily, I had the reaction to get over there, and luckily there was nothing there, and I could just slow down and get back on the road. But it was just a country road, and the lorry decided he was going to overtake, and boom, he was just a big truck. It was just right out into my line before you could even blink.
It doesn't matter how good a motorcycle rider you are or how much room you've given the other vehicles. They are bigger, stronger, heavier than we are, and they are the Mike Tyson, aren't they? So any
They
kind of
are.
collision is always going to end up worse for us.
Exactly, exactly. And the other thing too that I think that's worth talking about is, do you really need to overtake? Are we in a rush all the time? Just something to think about. And then the other thing that I always like to talk about is when we're with a group, it's very easy to get sucked into overtaking and flying past everybody when you're in a group. So that's just something that I always teach riders. Hey, just, think for yourself, hang back and just, analyze the situation instead of rushing in.
There's almost an unwritten rule, or there should be a written rule, really, or at least an agreed rule. If you are going to ride in a group, what gesticulations are going to mean? And because I ride with someone quite often, and he very specifically says, I will not give you any information. I'm not going to help you because you need to make your own decision. So fine,
Yeah.
if there's oil on the road or a dead badger or something, then yes, he'll point it out.
Yes.
But he won't beckon me or encourage me to do something that I'm not comfortable doing.
Great. That's a good friend. I don't ride with many people. There's only a select few because people tend to leave the brain in the toolbox at home when they go out in a group. I don't know what it is, but that's a good friend. He's a good rider to go out with.
Mark, shall we move on to our next topic in this particular episode? It's a little more about slow speed control. Is that right?
A kind of little bit about filtering and some slow speed control drills to practice to kind of give you a bit more confidence, especially if it's tight. You're in the city, squeezing between cars, that type of thing. So we'll just run this first video through on the mighty CB.
Well, nice.
So just find a car park somewhere. A nice white line's always good to see if you can kind of stick on that white line, and we'll just run it through step by step and kind of break it down a little bit now. So the first thing to think about is your head, having your head up and eyes forward. And it sounds pretty straightforward, but your balance is in your ears. So if you're kind of looking down, you can get a little bit dizzy, a little bit disorientated. So it's important just to keep your head up. The next thing to think about is the revs. Basically, I tell riders to double the idle speed as long as the bike's not a boxer bike. If it's a longitudinal crank, that stabilizes the bike. It's kind of like a bit of a cheat. So you got your revs up higher, and it stabilizes the bike. It makes it less wobbly. The next thing to think about is just to have the clutch in the friction zone. So you're basically slipping against that clutch and eyes up. and then just a little bit of rear brake. So the rear brake just kind of stabilizes, drags the bike, and just makes it a lot more stable, if you like. And then body wise, just have that core engaged, and that allows you to kind of relax your arms, and yeah, keep you. The goal is to go as slow as you can. On that white line, I think I was 5 kilometers an hour. So what's that in miles an hour?
Not a
Maybe
lot at all.
three.
I wouldn't think, yeah, I wouldn't think you could do 3 miles an hour on a bike and not fall down. Um, there's, there's again, it's a frequent thing we always talk about, and motorcycle trainers always talk about, is just information. The more information you can give yourself, the better, because you can make better judgment calls. But also, a lot of that comes from looking ahead. The example there, of course, is don't look down at the white line. You're looking ahead, because that's where you're traveling towards. You need to make sure that that information that's further down in front of you is all in here, so you can make the right kind of decision as to whether you do need to slow or you can speed up. Of course, when it comes to filtering, then it's a huge, great minefield, and we could do another entire episode dedicated to filtering on the motorway or even in town. But slow speed control is so important, isn't it, on motorcycles, to understand mechanically what's going on underneath you, but also so you can control it a lot better. Just because there's a lot of people out there who talk about when they're talking about, or when they're looking at getting a new bike, an updated bike, they often speak about motorcycle height and motorcycle weight. But if you can control the bike, and again, I've seen people who 5'4", 5'3", who are perfectly in control of the likes of, perfectly in control of a heavyweight adventure bike, Africa Twin, for example.
Yeah, listen, that's 100%. And I've got a adventure bike. It's 200 plus kilos, and I'm not the tallest person, so you need to be better. I go out riding with a bunch of mates that are 6.5 foot, and they're dabbing their legs everywhere. And my feet are on the pedals, on the pegs. Cannot dab, and I don't like doing that anyway, because you can hurt your knee and twist a knee or whatever. But that's 100% right,
Yeah,
and it's just one of those things. It's not very sexy, slow speed riding, but yeah, good riders, like, we teach it a lot, especially in the adventure and the off road stuff, is how to go slow. And it makes a massive difference to heaps of things, when you getting onto the slippery stuff, or the mud, or the sand, or river, all that stuff. Having those basic slow speed controls, and keeping that, the tension going with that rear brake. That's very important to stabilize the bike, and it kind of gives you that confidence. Then, if you can go at a walking pace, or even keep still on a bike like that, it gives you the confidence. You can kind of thread the needle when you're filtering in the city.
I lived in London for the best part of 11 years, the majority of which I was commuting on a motorbike. It wasn't a particularly long commute, but there's a lot of traffic in London, as you'll be not
Yes.
surprised to hear. But whether it's on a twist and go scooter, or a slightly big, I had a VFR 800 at one point.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Those things are narrow enough to get to dart through a lot of the traffic, and you could. It was always a bit of a challenge to try and get to the front of the traffic light queue. But some of those tips there are so useful. And actually, when during that period of my life, I didn't necessarily use the rear brake enough, and so I'm taking advice and tips from this kind of video series. It was later in life when I learned that the rear brake is your friend, and it's there for a particular reason, not just for stopping. So yeah, so clutch control, a little bit of throttle, rear brake, use that combination, get familiar with that. That sort of trio. And then over time, as you practice these things, it becomes a lot more natural, and obviously a lot more helpful. But you found yourself there just on a white line in a car park. Absolutely, so it's as simple as that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Just find out somewhere quiet, and yeah, it's just getting those fusion of machine control skills, um, balance that out, and the revs is a good one. People kind of maybe don't like to rev their bike like that, but that's a bit of a cheat. So it just makes the engine spin up more, makes the bike more stable. With all those gyro kind of forces that are going on with the engine. And then, yeah, that clutch in the friction zone, and then just dragging the rear brake against that friction zone, it just makes the whole thing much more stable. And then, yeah, just bring in then the core, engage that core, so that your arms are relaxed and you can just kind of dance with the handlebars a little bit, eyes up, and away you go. And whenever you can ride along the straight line, we've got something cool to do next.
Oh yeah, look at this.
So this one's full lock, full steering lock. Same deal as before, rear brake, but yeah, full lock, and you can see the vision, look right round where you need to go. Rear brake dragging, and off you go.
Again, another really important technique, isn't it? To learn these things, just to make sure that you're comfortable and you're well balanced on your bike.
Exactly. Yeah, it's when you're feeling like you mastered the white line going straight. Yeah, try that full steering lock.
It's a tough one because you're always tempted to look down, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very tempting to look down, but just get that head turned right round. You can see that the vision, same deal as before. Double idle, revs, clutch in the friction zone, rear brake, and then get the handlebar on full lock. And of course you can just dab your foot down if it gets a bit wobbly. Just stick your foot down, it's no big deal.
Brilliant. I'm going to get out there in the Bennett's car park.
On the Grom.
On the Grom. Yeah. Cool, Mark. I think we've got some really, really good advice there, and I'm conscious that we don't start giving people too much information to go away and practice. Shall we have a quick summary then of what we've learned in this episode?
Yeah, so overtaking. Do we really need to overtake? And just being aware of what can happen, these days, it's very important just to kind of have that, understanding. And I always ride like people are out to get me. And that's kept me in one piece over the years. So just expect the unexpected. That's the key thing from the overtake. And then, the slow speed is just practice. Practice makes perfect. And, we've got that old saying about the 10,000 hours. That's a lot of hours, compared to doing 20 hours on your motorbike license of structured practice. So, even if you can just keep building that up and chipping away, each week doing a few hours, it all adds up.
Exactly that. Mark, thank you so much for your time today. Next episode, Mark and I are going to be discussing how to avoid the most common biking errors, which sounds a bit gruesome, but I'm sure we've got plenty of good advice for you this time. Thanks, Mark.
No worries. See you, Michael.
Awesome. Well, I hope everyone's taken at least one element of that away, that they can go away and practice. I know I will. Maybe it is in the Grom, maybe it is in the car park. But I love the fact that we can talk these things through, and feel free to share your experiences or your own advice perhaps in the comment section below on our YouTube channel, or come and find us. We've got a new community website called BikeSocial, BikeClub. You can use your search engine, come find us there. And then if you're not yet a BikeSocial member, then you should be, because you can then reap the rewards of over 150 different motorcycle-related deals, competitions, discounts. BikeSocial membership is free if you insure your bike directly with Bennett's. But you can still become a member even if you don't insure your bike with Bennett's, for £6 a month or £60 a year. All right, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Honda Motorcycles are supporting this series because safety is one of their key business pillars, and their quest for safety inspires their innovations in products, technology, and education, which is why they're committed to achieving zero traffic fatalities involving Honda mobility products worldwide by 2050.